Pursuant to an agreement with the Ranking Member Nadler and without objection, Chairman Comer and Ranking Member Raskin will be permitted to participate in today's hearing for the purposes of making opening statements and asking questions of the witness. They each will receive 3 minutes for an opening statement and 5 minutes to question the witness. The chair now recognizes himself for an opening statement. Robert Hur was appointed special counsel on January 12th, 2023. He had a fundamental question to address. Did Joe Biden unlawfully retain classified information? The answer, yes, he did. Page 1 of Mr. Hur's report, he says this: our investigation uncovered evidence that President Biden willfully retained and disclosed classified materials after his vice presidency when he was a private citizen. He further writes, Mr. Biden willfully retained marked classified documents about Afghanistan and handwritten notes in his notebooks, which he stored in unsecure places in his home. Joe Biden kept classified information, and Joe Biden failed to store classified information properly. Mr. Hur made these determinations after interviewing 147 witnesses. He examined 7 million documents, including emails, text messages, photographs, videos, toll records, and other materials from both classified and unclassified sources. But there's more. Joe Biden not only kept information he wasn't allowed to keep, and he not only failed to secure that information properly, he also shared it with people who weren't allowed to see it. Shared that information with his ghostwriter. And remember, this is information that only individuals with a security clearance are supposed to see. Mr. Hur told us on page 200 of his report that it's the kind of information that, quote, risk serious damage to America's national security. And what did Joe Biden have to say about all this? What was his explanation? On page 94 of Mr. Hur's report, Joe Biden said he took his notebooks with him after his vice presidency because, quote, they're mine. And every president before me has done the same exact thing. Never mind the fact that he had never been president when he took this information, but what comes through is Joe Biden felt he was entitled. You can almost hear it. You can feel the arrogance in this statement. They're mine. But even with all that, Mr. Hur chose not to bring charges because, quote, Mr. Biden would likely present himself to a jury as he did in our interview of him, as a sympathetic, well-meaning, elderly man with a poor memory. A forgetful old man who Mr. Hur said did not remember when he was vice president, forgetting on the first day of the interview when his term ended, and forgetting on the second day of the interview when his term as vice president began. Mr. Hur produced a 345-page report, but in the end, it boils down to a few key facts. Joe Biden kept classified information. Joe Biden failed to properly secure classified information. And Joe Biden shared classified information with people he wasn't supposed to. Joe Biden broke the law. But because he's a forgetful old man who would appear sympathetic to a jury, Mr. Hur chose not to bring charges. Mr. Hur, we think it's important that you be able to respond to President Biden's response to your report. So we're going to play a short video of President Biden's press conference after your report was released, because there's things in this press conference that the President of the United States says that are directly contradicted by what you found in your report. So if we could play that video.
Hey, everybody. Good evening. Let me say a few things before I take your questions. As you know, the special counsel released his findings today about their look into my handling of classified documents.
President Biden, something the special counsel said in his report is that one of the reasons you were not charged is because, in his description, you are a well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory.
I'm well-meaning, and I'm an elderly man, and I know what the hell I'm doing. I've been president. I put this country back on its feet. I don't need his recommendation. It's
How
totally
bad is your memory, and can you continue as president?
My memory is so bad I let you speak. That's
Your
my...
memory has gotten worse, Mr. President.
My memory is not good. My memory is fine. My memory, take a look at what I've done since I become president. None of you thought I could pass any of the things I got passed. How'd that happen? You know, I guess I just forgot what was going on.
Mr. President.
If voters have concerns about your age, how are you going to assuage them? And do you fear that this report is only going to fuel further concerns about your age?
Only by some of you.
Mr. President, you were clear on criminal liability today, but do you take responsibility for at least being careless with classified material?
I take responsibility for not having seen exactly what my staff was doing. It goes in and points out things that appeared in my garage, things that came out of my home, things that were moved not by me, but my staff.
Mr. President, for months when you were asked about your age, you would respond with the words, "Watch me." Many American people have been watching, and they have expressed concerns about your age.
That is your judgment. That is your judgment. That is not the judgment of the press.
They express concerns about your mental acuity. They say that you are too old. Mr. President, in December, you told me that you believe there are many other Democrats who could defeat Donald Trump. So why does it have to be you now? What is your answer
Because
to
I'm the
that
most
question?
qualified person in this country to be president of the United States and finish the job I started.
Do you believe that, guys? Mr. President, why are you confusing the names of world leaders?
Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much.
I did not share classified information. I did not share it.
With your ghostwriter.
With my ghostwriter, I did not. Guarantee you did not.
But the
What
special counsel said in the
Well, no,
report
he
that he
did
did.
not say that.
Okay.
He did not say that.
But Mr. President, one of the...
Let me answer your question. The fact of the matter is, what I didn't want repeated, I didn't want him to know, and I didn't read it to him, was I had written a long memorandum to President Obama why we should not be in Afghanistan. And I was multiple pages. And so what I was referring to, I said classified, I should have said should be private because it was a contact between the president and the vice president as to what was going on. That's what he was referring to. It was not classified information in that document. That was not classified.
He called on me. When you look back at this incident, is there anything you would do differently now? And do you think that a special prosecutor should have been appointed in the first place in both of these cases?
First of all, what I would have done is oversee the transfer of the material that was in my office, in my offices. I should have done that. If I go back, I didn't have the responsibility to that. That was my staff was supposed to do that, and they referenced that in the report. And my staff did not do it in the way that, for example, I didn't know how half the boxes got in my garage until I found out staff gathered them up, put them together, and took them to the garage in my home. And all the stuff that was in my home was in filing cabinets that were either locked or able to be locked. It was in my house. It wasn't out in Mar-a-Lago in a public place and none of it was high classified. Didn't have any of that red stuff on it. You know what I mean? Around the corners? None of that. And so I wish I had paid more attention to how the documents were being moved and where. I thought they were being moved to the archives. I thought all of it was being moved. That's what I thought. Now, what was the last part of your question?
Whether a special counsel should have been appointed in this case and in the case of your rival president, former president?
I think a special counsel should have been appointed. And the reason I think a special counsel should have been appointed is because I did not want to be in a position that they looked at Trump and weren't going to look at me, just like they looked at the vice president. And the fact is they made a firm conclusion. I did not break the law, period. Thank you all very, very much. The hostage negotiation, look. I'm of the view, as you know, that the conduct of the response in the Gaza Strip has been over the top. I think that, as you know, initially, the president of Mexico, Sisi, did not want to open up the gate to allow humanitarian material to get in. I talked to him. I convinced him to open the gate. Let them make them part of the Middle East and recognize them fully in return for certain things that the United States would commit to do. And the commitment that we were proposing to do related to two items. I'm not going to go in detail, but one of them was to deal with the protection against their arch enemy to the northwest, northeast, I should say. The second one, by providing ammunition and material for them to defend themselves. Coincidentally, that's the time frame when this broke out. I have no proof what I'm about to say, but it's not unreasonable to suspect that the Hamas understood what was about to take place and wanted to break it up before it happened.
Mr. President.
Thank you, everybody. We're going to need everybody to hold for a moment.
Chair now recognizes the ranking member, Mr. Nadler, for an opening statement.
Mr. Chairman, I'm glad you have such information, such admiration for the president that you allowed him to take the first 10 minutes of this hearing. Mr. Chairman, House Republicans may be desperate to convince America that white conservative men are on the losing end of a two-tiered justice system, a theory that appeals to the MAGA crowd but has no basis in reality. But your comments today make me wonder if you have read the special counsel's report at all. Her report does help us draw a distinction between President Biden and Donald Trump, just not the one you want. Two distinctions, actually. First, the report is clear that, quote, at no point did the special counsel find evidence that Mr. Biden intended or had reason to believe the information would be used to injure the United States or to benefit a foreign nation, close quote. With respect to the classified documents found in President Biden's possession, quote, the decision to decline criminal charges was straightforward, close quote. And with respect to the special counsel's investigation, quote, Mr. Biden turned in classified documents to the National Archives and the Department of Justice, consented to the search of multiple locations, including his homes, sat for a voluntary interview, and in other ways cooperated with the investigation, close quote. President Biden acted responsibly, cooperated completely, and the decision to decline criminal charges was relatively straightforward. In short, to borrow a phrase from the last administration, the Her report represents the complete and total exoneration of President Biden. And how does that record contrast with President Trump, the documents he retained, and the criminal charges pending against him in Florida? We know that Trump deliberately took large amounts of classified information from the White House. He has admitted as much, occasionally pretending that he classified this information without telling anyone on his way out the door. We know that he stored that information around Mar-a-Lago in the craziest of places, on the ballroom stage, spilled across the floor of an unlocked closet next to the toilet. We know that he showed classified military plans to an author interviewing him at Bedminster. Quote, as president, I could have declassified it, Trump says on an audio recording. Now I can't, you know, but this is still a secret. Still a secret, close quote. So much for the declassification theory. We know from the indictment that Trump is alleged to have shared these classified documents with many other visitors to Mar-a-Lago. And we know that, despite this outrageous conduct, the Department of Justice gave Trump every opportunity to avoid criminal charges. Again, in the special counsel's words, quote, after being given multiple chances to return classified documents and avoid prosecution, Mr. Trump allegedly did the opposite. He not only refused to return the documents for many months, but he also obstructed justice by enlisting others to destroy evidence and then to lie about it, close quote. Why did the president charge former President Trump but not President Biden? Not because of some vast conspiracy, not because the so-called deep state was out to get him, but because former President Trump was fundamentally incapable of taking advantage of even one of the many, many chances he was given to avoid those charges. Which brings me to the second distinction this report helps us draw between President Biden and Donald Trump. Simply put, President Biden had the mental acuity to navigate this situation. Donald Trump did not. Much has been made of the special counsel's gratuitous comments about the President Biden's age. But let's set the context. After returning every classified document, after opening his home to federal investigators, while simultaneously managing the first hours of the crisis in Israel, President Biden volunteered to sit through a 5-hour interview with the special counsel. I believe, as is his habit, that President Biden probably committed a verbal slip or two during the interview. And I'm not sure any of that matters, because when the interview was over, Mr. Hur completely exonerated President Biden. And then there is Donald Trump. What kind of man bungles not one, but dozens of opportunities to avoid criminal liability? What must that say about his mental state? Here, too, the record speaks for itself.
One of the great memories of all time. James Webb. I don't remember the names. Don't remember the name. Viktor Orban. Did anyone ever hear of him? He's the leader of Turkey. By the way, they never report the crowd on January 6th. You know, Nikki Haley is in charge of security. 3 years later, how about that?
Did you actually have a one-on-one with Comey then?
Not much, not even that I remember. I like Besitos. We have languages coming into our country. We have nobody that even speaks those languages. They're truly foreign languages. Nobody speaks them. Saudi Arabia and Russia will repeat your... I have a really good memory.
Your next wife was a woman by the name of Marla Maples.
That's right.
Do you recall what years you were married to Ms. Maples?
It's called like Up Here, and it's called Memory, and it's called other things.
So you don't remember saying you have one of the best memories? I don't remember that.
And Putin, you know, has so little respect for Obama that he's starting to throw around the nuclear word. You heard that, nuclear. We have to win in November, or we're not going to have Pennsylvania. They'll change the name. I talked to Putin a lot.
Did you ask him that? I don't remember that. I saw that this morning. I don't remember asking him that question.
I have a good memory and all that stuff, like a great memory. For 20 years, they were fighting ISIS. I defeated ISIS in 4 weeks. And we did with Obama. We won an election that everyone said couldn't be won. I'm not cognitively. And you know what? When I am, you're going to enjoy it. You're going to be the first people. I know my people. You'll say, all right, Trump, you did a good job. Get the hell out of here. That's it.
That is a man who is incapable of avoiding criminal liability, a man who is wholly unfit for office, and a man who, at the very least, ought to think twice before accusing others of cognitive decline. Thank you for being here today, Mr. Hur. Thank you for illuminating a stark choice for this country in the months to come. I look forward to your testimony, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the chairman of the Oversight Committee, Mr. Comer, for an opening statement.
Thank you. In August 2022, President Biden questioned in a 60 Minutes interview how anyone can be that irresponsible when asked about classified documents in the possession of former President Trump. But when President Biden said this, he knew that he had stashed classified materials in several unsecured locations for years, dating back to his time as vice president and even as a U.S. senator. President Biden, the White House, and his personal attorneys have not been honest with the American people about his willful retention of classified material and continue to hide information from Congress. President Biden's attorneys claim to have first discovered classified material at Penn Biden Center on November 2nd, 2022. However, President Biden and his lawyers kept it secret from the American people before the midterm elections. CBS News broke the story in January 2023, leaving Americans to wonder if the White House had any intention of ever disclosing that President Biden hoarded classified documents for years. One of my first actions after becoming chairman of the House Oversight Committee was to launch an investigation into President Biden's mishandling of classified documents. This investigation started before Special Counsel Hur was named, and what we found is alarming. Information obtained through multiple transcribed interviews conducted by the Oversight Committee contradict the White House's and President Biden's personal attorney's narrative about the discovery of classified documents at the Penn Biden Center. In fact, The real timeline began in the spring of 2021, not November 2022, as the White House claimed. Additionally, the classified documents were not kept in a locked closet, as asserted by the White House. We've also learned that 5 White House employees and a Department of Defense employee were involved in the early stages of coordinating the organizing, moving, and removing of boxes that were later found to contain classified materials. There's no reasonable explanation as to why so many White House employees were concerned with retrieving boxes they believed only contained personal documents and materials. Why did President Biden keep these specific documents in unsecure locations for years? Many questions remain, but now the White House is obstructing Congress as we seek the truth for the American people. We've subpoenaed former White House counsel Dana Remus to appear for a deposition to provide information to our committee, but the White House is seeking to block her testimony. We've also subpoenaed the Department of Justice for audio recordings and transcript of President Biden's interview with Special Counsel Hur. These were due the morning of the State of the Union. Only this morning, a couple of hours before today's hearing, the Department of Justice finally provided the transcript of President Biden's interview with Special Counsel Hur. The timing is not coincidental. Although we've had little time to review the transcripts, from what we have seen, it is clear that the White House did not want Special Counsel Hur's final report to be released. The White House has refused to be transparent with the American people about the president's mishandling of classified documents. And worse, they have appeared to have lied about the timeline, about who handled the documents, and even about the contents of President Biden's interview with Special Counsel Hur. That is why today's hearing is important. Transparency is what we seek today, and we look forward to Special Counsel Hur's testimony. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the ranking member of the Oversight Committee, Mr. Raskin, for his opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman Jordan. There are just 3 basic points that all Americans need to understand about Mr. Hur's report. Number 1, the special counsel exonerates President Biden. The very first line of the report says it all. Quote, "We conclude that no criminal charges are warranted in this matter. We would reach the same conclusion even if Department of Justice policy did not foreclose criminal charges against a sitting president." Second, the report establishes that President Biden offered complete and unhesitating cooperation with the special counsel's investigation. The Justice Department and the National Archives were proactively notified of the classified documents, and they were turned over. The president allowed the FBI to search his homes, and he sat for a voluntary interview for more than 5 hours on October 8th and October 9th, even as he was busy responding to Hamas's vicious terrorist attack in Israel. The report thus demonstrates President Biden's complete devotion to the rule of law and his respect for a fair and independent Department of Justice. President Biden did not assert executive privilege or claim absolute immunity for presidential crimes. He did not hide boxes of documents under his bed or in a bathtub. He did not fight investigators, nor did he seek to redact a single word of Mr. Hur's report. He consented to the search of numerous locations, including his homes, and he did everything he could to cooperate, not obstruct. Third, Special Counsel Hur repeatedly emphasizes that President Biden's conduct contrasts sharply with that of former President Trump. Hur observes that unlike President Biden, quote, "The allegations set forth in the indictment of Mr. Trump, if proven, would clearly establish not only Mr. Trump's willfulness, but also serious aggravating factors." He sets forth these points of difference in detail, quote, "Most notably, after being given multiple chances to return classified documents and avoid prosecution, Trump allegedly did the opposite. According to the indictment, he not only refused to return the documents for months, but he also obstructed justice by enlisting others to destroy evidence and then to lie about it," unquote. He returned only a portion of subpoenaed documents and deliberately withheld the rest. Unlike President Biden, Trump did not alert the National Archives or DOJ of the documents, nor did he turn over all the classified materials in his possession. He did not agree to sit down for a voluntary interview with the special counsel. He never consented to a search of his home. On the contrary, Trump suggested that his attorney hide or destroy evidence requested by the FBI and the grand jury. Trump carefully instructed his aide to move boxes of classified documents to hide them from the FBI. Trump tried to delete incriminating security tape footage from Mar-a-Lago, and he got his attorney to provide a false certification to the FBI saying he had produced all the documents in his possession. He did not. Given that this report is so damning in the contrast between Biden and Trump, it is hard for me to see why our colleagues think that this hearing advances their flailing and embarrassing quest to impeach the President of the United States. What America sees today is evidence of one president who believes in the rule of law and works to protect it, and one who has nothing but contempt for the rule of law and acts solely in pursuit of his own constantly multiplying corrupt schemes. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Without objection, all other opening statements will be included in the record. We will now introduce today's witness. The Honorable Robert Hur was appointed as his special counsel in January 2023 to investigate the removal and retention of classified documents discovered at the Penn Biden Center for Diplomacy and Global Engagement. He previously served as the Principal Associate Deputy Attorney General at the Department of Justice and as the United States Attorney for the District of Maryland. He was a law clerk for Chief Justice William Rehnquist and also clerked for Judge Alex Kaczynski on the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. We welcome our witness and thank him for appearing today. We will begin by swearing you in. Mr. Hur, would you please stand? Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief, so help you God? Let the record reflect that the witness has answered in the affirmative. Thank you, and you can be seated. Please know that your written testimony will be entered into the record in its entirety. Accordingly, we ask that you summarize your testimony. Mr. Hur, you may begin with your opening statement. Make sure you got that mic on if you could, Mr. Hur. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman Jordan, Ranking Member Nadler, Chairman Comer, Ranking Member Raskin, members of the committee, good morning. I'm privileged to have